Hi guys, so instead of doing the worked out sheets like I normally do, I'm just going to go through a video that works through every problem for you because I think it'll be easier. So for 1b, it says find the slope and intercept of the equation. So this is in standard form, but we need to get it into slope-intercept form so we can find our slope and our intercept. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So we need to get y by itself in this equation. So I'm going to take this 2x and subtract it from both sides. So minus 2x and minus 2x. So we get negative 6y equals negative 2x plus 10. Now y still isn't by itself because we have this negative 6 out front. So I'm going to divide by negative 6 everywhere, which would give me y equals, now we have negative 2 divided by negative 6. So let's go ahead and put that over here. Now to simplify it, both of these can be divided by a negative 2. So divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a positive 1. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3. So then negative 2 divided by negative 6 simplifies to 1/3. So y equals 1/3 x. Now we have 10 over negative 6, so 10 over negative 6. Both of those can be divided by a 2, so divide by 2 on top and bottom. So 10 divided by 2 would give me a 5. Negative 6 divided by 2 is a negative 3. So our intercept here is minus 5/3. Now again, this problem didn't want us to figure out what the equation was. It wanted our slope and our intercept. So we're going to just go ahead and write slope equals, and our slope here is the 1/3 because that's in front of the x, and our y-intercept is going to be the negative 5/3. So slope is 1/3, y-intercept is negative 5/3. Now for 2b, it wants us to write the equation of the table in slope-intercept form. So again, this is just y equals mx plus b. So we have to find our slope, and we have to find our intercept. So slope of a table is change in y over change in x. So my change in y from 10 to 14 is plus 4. From 14 to 18, it's also plus 4. From 6 to 12, it's plus 6. From 12 to 18, plus 6. So that means my change in y is a positive 4. My change in x is a positive 6. And then this can be simplified to give us, if we divide by the 2 on top and on the bottom, we get 2/3 would be our slope here. Now for our y-intercept, we're looking for when x equals 0 on this table. So we're going to have to go backwards. So if this is a positive 6 and we're going forward 6, we have to subtract 6 to go the other way. So 6 minus 6 is 0, and that's the x equals 0 that we wanted. Then we have to go the other way on this one. So instead of adding 4, I subtract 4. So 10 minus 4 is 6. So since our y-intercept is where x equals 0, that means our y-intercept will be a 6. So then our final answer here is y equals 2/3 x plus 6. Okay, 3. So 3b says a caterer charges $170 to cater a party for 15 people and $250 for 25 people. If they charge a setup fee of $50, write an equation in slope-intercept form to represent the situation. So since our y-intercept is in dollars, that means our y values have to be the dollars. So we're going to go ahead and write our two points here. So the first one is for 15 people, it costs $170. So the 15 people is our X. Our Y is the $170. So $170. Now our other point, we have 25 people, and it costs $250. Now we just use our slope formula. So y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. We can label these. So we get 250 minus 170 over 25 minus 15. So 250 minus 170 will be 80. 25 minus 15 will be 10. So 80 divided by 10 would be 8. So that means that our slope is 8. Now our y-intercept is easier than that because it tells us there's a setup fee of $50. So whatever fee you have to pay no matter what, so like a setup fee, that is your intercept. So b equals 50. So our final equation is y equals, our m is 8, so 8x, and our b is 50, so plus 50. Okay, for b, so for this one, it says find the value of w, so the line passing through 810 and w15 has a slope of -1. So again, we're just going to label these x1, y1, x2, y2, and of course our m is -1. So we know our slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. So we can just substitute in everything that we know. So we know m is -1. We know y2 is 15. We know y1 is 10, so minus 10. x2 is w, so we're just going to write a w. x1 is 8, so minus 8. Now we're going to take this equation and simplify everything that we can. So we know that -1 equals, this 15 minus 10 can become a 5. And then w minus 8 is on the bottom. So we still don't know what w equals. So now we have to think, 5 divided by what equals -1? So 5 divided by something is -1. Well, 5 divided by -5 would give us a -1. So we know that this number has to be a -5, which means that w minus 8 also has to equal -5. So the hardest part is figuring out what this bottom has to equal. So you just have to think 5 divided by -5 would give us a -1, which means w minus 8 also equals -5. So we have w minus 8 equals -5. Then we can just solve this for w. So plus 8 on both sides. So I get w equals 3. And that's the answer. And again, if you would like to check your answer to make sure it's right, we can just use this formula over here and make sure it comes out to the right answer. So 15 minus 10. And then we said w equals 3. So we're going to put a 3 instead of a w. So 3 minus 8. Let's see if that comes out to equal -1. So 15 minus 10 is 5. 3 minus 8 is -5. 5 divided by -5 is -1. And that's what we wanted. So that's the right answer. All right, 5. So this one, we have to write an equation for the sequence. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So we need to have, if our third term, so a sub 3, that means our third term is 4. A sub 4 means our fourth term is 2. A sub 5 means our fifth term is 0. So let's just go ahead and write those out. So our third term is 4. Our fourth term is 2. And our fifth term is 0. So we're going to use the equation a sub n equals d times n plus a sub 0. So the first thing we have to find is our common difference. So from 4 to 2, that's minus 2. From 2 to 0, that's minus 2. So we know that our equation starts out as a sub n equals, our common difference is minus 2, so negative 2 n. And now I need to find my 0 term, which is a sub 0. So I have to go backwards. So my second term, instead of subtracting 2, I have to add 2. So 4 plus 2 is 6. Then I keep going till I get to 0, so 6 plus 2 is 8. Now I'm finally at my 0 term, so 8 plus 2 is 10. So my 0 term here is 10, so my equation is plus 10. Now 6b is going to use this equation so we can find our 10th term. So we're going to use a sub n equals negative 2n plus 10. And we're looking for our 10th term. So instead of an n, we're going to replace that with a 10. So this will become a sub 10 equals negative 2 times 10 plus 10. Now all we have to do is simplify that. So negative 2 times 10 is negative 20 plus 10. So a sub 10 still equals negative 20 plus 10. And if we simplify that further, we get a sub 10. So our 10th term has to equal negative 10. And that is the answer. So those two problems kind of go together. All right, 7b says to find the x-intercept by graphing f of x equals negative 1/3 x plus 2. So if we have f of x equals, that's pretty much the same thing as y equals. So y equals negative 1/3 x plus 2, which means our slope is negative 1/3, and our intercept is a positive 2. So first thing we're going to do is graph our intercept, which is at 2. And our slope is negative 1/3. So that means I go down 1, right 3, and put at my point. Now our whole goal is to find the x-intercept, so we need to hit the x-axis. So I'm going to keep going. So down 1, right 3. So you can see we hit this point right here, which is on our x-axis. And that point is at x equals 6. But remember, we have to write our x-intercept as a coordinate point. So our x-intercept is going to equal the point 6, 0. And that's the answer. So this graph is really just to help you find the intercept. It doesn't really matter if it's all the way done. All right, so 8b and 8a we did in class, but I'll just do these very quickly to have a refresher. So remember, if you have a horizontal line, your slope is 0. Anytime you have a 0 slope, it's going to be y equals whatever your intercept is. So our y-intercept is 4, so y equals 4. If you have an I just gave you the answer. If we have a vertical line, that means our slope is undefined. And if we have an undefined slope, that means our equation will look like x equals some number. And if you notice, our x-intercept here is a positive 4, so x equals 4. So 0 slopes are y equals. Undefined slope are x equals. So our next one we're going to go to is 9b. So there's two different ways to do this one. You can either solve for y in graph, or you can find your intercepts in graph. So I'm going to do both ways. So the first way, we're going to find our x-intercept. If this thing would work. There we go. So our x-intercept, that means we replace our y value with 0. So I have negative 4x plus 3 times 0 equals negative 24. So 3 times 0 just cancels out. So I'm left with negative 4x equals negative 24. Then I can just divide by a negative 4. So x equals negative 24 divided by negative 4 is a positive 6, which means our x-intercept is 6, 0. So we can go to our x-axis, put a point at 6. Now our y-intercept, we do the same thing, except we're going to replace x with 0. So I have negative 4 times 0 plus 3y equals negative 24. So the 0 cancels out. So I'm left with 3y equals negative 24. Divide by 3. So I get y equals negative 8, which means 0, negative 8 is our y-intercept. So I go down to my y-axis to negative 8 and put my other point. Now what we can do, not that. We can connect our line and we have a finished graph. Now the other way to do it, we can solve for y. So I have negative 4x plus 3y equals negative 24. So I could add 4x to both sides. So 3y equals 4x minus 24. Then I can divide by 3. So y equals 4/3 x minus 8. So our slope is 4/3, and our y-intercept is negative 8, which is what we got the last way. So I go down, put my point at negative 8. Then I go up 4 to the right 3. Up 4, right 3. And then we just connect it with a line, and notice we got the same exact answer. Okay, number 10 says write the equation of the line that passes through 4, 9 and negative 1, 9. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to label these x1, y1, x2, y2, and use my slope formula. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Then I'm going to have 9 minus 9 over x2 is negative 1, x1 is 4. So 9 minus 9 is 0 over negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5. So if I have 0 over a number, that means my slope is 0. So if you remember on A when we did it, we had 2 over 0. So if the 0 is on the bottom, that means it's undefined. But on this one, we have a 0 slope, which means it's going to be y equals to some number. So if you look at our two coordinate points, on this one we have our x is a 4, our y is a 9. This one, our y is also a 9. So that means y has to equal 9. Make sure you're looking at your 2 points that they give you and not the number that you have on the bottom here. Now remember on this one over here, we had the points 4 something and 4 something. I don't remember what they were. So on both of these, our x value was 4. And remember with undefined, it's always x equals a number. Well, since both of those have a 4, it was x equals 4. Okay, 11 says what is the y-intercept of a line that has a slope of 4 and goes through the point negative 4, 9? So we're going to use point slope here because we have a point and we have the slope. So this should be a -4. It just got cut off. So we're going to say m equals -4. That would be our x1 and our y1. So we're going to use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Then we just plug everything in. So I have y minus, my y1 is 9, so minus 9 equals, our slope was a -4, then x minus, notice our x1 is a -4, so minus -4. So we can't keep this as minus a negative, so remember minus a negative becomes a plus. So we're going to end up with y minus 9 equals -4 times x plus 4. So that minus a negative becomes a plus sign. Now this question was asking for our y-intercept, so all we're going to do is convert this into slope-intercept form. So I have y minus 9 equals -4 times x plus 4. So our first step is to distribute. So I have y minus 9 equals -4x. -4 times 4 is -16. Then I have to get rid of this -9 here, so I add 9 to both sides. So y equals -4x. -16 plus 9 is -7. So that means my y-intercept has to be 0, -7. That's my answer. And the last one, 12, we're going to convert this from standard form to slope-intercept form. So again, I need to get rid of this x. So I subtract 2/3 x from both sides. So I get -y equals -2/3 x minus 5. Now I can't have this as -y. And remember, this is the same thing as -1y. So -1y equals -2/3 x minus 5. So I'm just going to divide all of this by a -1. So that cancels out, and I'm left with y equals -2/3 divided by -1 would become a positive. So a positive 2/3 x. Then -5 divided by -1 is a positive 5. So this right here is our answer in slope-intercept form. So that's all for the B's. So if you have any more questions, feel free to email me, message me on Remind, whatever you need to do, and I can help you out. Make sure this is done by tomorrow.